initiative that started through Tulani and I. We met one Saturday morning. It was a little bit like a blind date. And whilst I was talking to him, I thought to myself, it would be wonderful if my white friends could hear Tulani right now. Now, admittedly, it got a little bit out of hand, and here we are. So, I don't know most of you guys, and there's no braai, but there will be coffee afterwards. But the purpose of tonight is, let's just try and hear the other perspective, without fighting back, without our arguments. The biggest problem in South Africa is this discussion takes place on the internet, and we want to change the world one News 24 comment at a time. And luckily they stopped it now, but there's other blogs that we can paint. And the problem is, when this discussion happens in anonymity, then it becomes rude and it becomes ugly. So very deliberately we want to get these people in a room so that when you've got a problem with the face, then when you have a problem with the colour, you're going to have a problem with the face and with the name as well. So this is an attempt to break away with anonymity and really see the people and their ideas. Now, before we get started with these guys, I'm going to ask Chris to be here. Chris is over here. He's from the Brooklyn from America, and he's just going to open up the scripture reading and prayer. And I really want to thank Brooklyn for allowing us to use your premises. This is very nice. Few churches are brave enough to do this. So thank you so much, and I would like us to just give them a round of applause.
So I want to open up with scripture tonight, just a few verses. That's, I think, for me personally, but for us in Brooklyn, is also very important. And it's these verses in 2 Corinthians 5, from verse 17 to 19. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not continuing their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. And, amen. Eh? That's where our heart lies, is that God has given us the ministry of reconciliation. Hopefully we can be a small part of something bigger. And I'm going to ask us, let's pray. Father, thank you so much for being with us tonight and that we can speak about different perspectives. We ask you, please open our hearts, because we know that reconciliation starts with listening to the other side. And we ask you to please bless the speakers and bless everyone who hears and help us just to get a glimpse of what you want us to do, Lord Jesus, so that we can praise you and honor you and that we can walk with you in the future. Amen.
If you guys are wondering whether God is present here, the fact that Chris got through that English unscathed is already an indication that God is really present and at work in this country. Now, what's going to happen tonight? We have 3 speakers. Now, the reason we have 3 speakers is because the thing that's so annoying when you go on social media and you have your friends posting these things on your wall or whatever. They always say, recently there's this bit of a fad that says a letter to white people and a letter to black people. What white people need to know about black people? What black people need to know about white people? And it's interesting because there's 500 of those articles by 500 different people, and they're not always saying the same thing. Now, that is annoying because it doesn't appreciate the nuance that's involved in this kind of conversation. There's no such thing as a black perspective. There's no such thing as, well, not a black perspective, sorry, there's no such thing as the black perspective, and there's no such thing as the white perspective. Because a lot of you whiteys in front of me, when you speak on behalf of white people, you're not necessarily representing me. And the same is the case here. So let's not think for a moment that these guys are representing every black person on the face of the planet. That's the reason why we have 3 different speakers, so that you can hear 3 different black perspectives. And the same is going to happen tomorrow, where there's going to be 3 different white perspectives. And chances are that they're going to disagree more with each other on stage, and then you guys have front row seats for this fight that takes place. So that's important. Now, how's it going to happen, or how's it going to work? They are each going to present for 10 minutes. Just a short presentation of their view or their views for 10 minutes. And after that, Italia is going to have a conversation with them. We're going to facilitate a conversation between the two of them. That's going to be for 50 minutes. And then after that, there's going to be time for about 45 minutes Q&A, where you can ask your question. I'll give you a little bit more information about the Q&A as we get closer to that. So our first speaker is going to be Lindizwe Zibi, and I think his bio should come up now. There we go. Lindizwe Zibi was born and raised in Jozi. So Jozi, I suppose, is Johannesburg. He attended UCT. You'll notice that UCT is pretty well attended here, where he completed his degree in a master's in chemical engineering. His hobbies include reading, watching and partaking in sports activities and traveling. Lindizwe is a driven and energetic people's person and is a firm believer that there's no problem without a simple solution. No pressure, Lindizwe. He is currently a practicing chemical engineer and is also pursuing his business interest in the field of engineering. Now his talk is going to be Ibali Nembilo Yam. Now, because all of you understand Zulu, he's going to do it in Zulu. And that's going to be the first talk. Let me introduce all the speakers so that I can disappear. Secondly, it's going to be Lukanyu. Lukanyu is your surname Mia. Alright. Lukanyu Mia. As you can see, he's only 2 meters away. Lukanyo, sorry. Lukanyo. He has passion for seeing Africa developed in his lifetime, that has seen him build or help build initiatives that are aimed at addressing Africa's issues and developing it. As you can see, Lukanyu is a lazy typer and didn't want to give us a big bio. But Lukanyu is involved with a whole host of interesting initiatives like Q Commons and a bunch of other things. Tulani, who's the co-founder of Real Talk, is currently the founding chief executive and lead researcher at Beraka. Of course, Beraka Value Investments. And Baraka is an investment holding company that seeks to find and invest in opportunities across various industries, including energy, mining, technology, and the financial sector. Baraka aims to identify undervalued companies to invest in that have real growth potential. He's also co-founder of TGIF Extra and Real Talk, and Tulani was also, he didn't put it here, but I think I should say, he was the SRC president of UCT, for what that's worth. Maybe that makes you judge him, I'm not sure. But regardless, and then Ty, who's going to facilitate the conversation after these 3 guys are finished. I had to get this bio because he refused to send me one. So Itai Chitaku has a master's degree in something at UCT. He is the executive and research assistant to the CEO at Econet Wireless International. And this isn't even a joke. He speaks French, German, English, Shona, and Xhosa. And those of you who listen to 702, he was the brain of 702 for 2 years running. So you might not recognize his face, but you might recognize his brain and his voice. So without further ado, Lindizwe, if you can do your presentation. Again, the topic is Ibali Lepilo Yam, with perfect pronunciation.
I thought it befitting that I name the title of my talk in Xhosa, which would make me appear, as a somewhat sophisticated and tribal Xhosa man, not Zulu. Let me assure you on set that I'm neither sophisticated nor tribalist. I'm just an engineer. I also thought of writing my bio in Xhosa, but realized that Tulani's Xhosa might be a bit rusted, and also the fact that I'll be addressing a white audience. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for affording me the opportunity, which is a rare opportunity, to contribute towards positive nation building. Good evening to all of you, and all protocol is observed. When I got the call from Tulani, little did I know it was of this particular nature. I've known Thulane since our university days as the controversial SRC president who, like myself, ran under the banner of the ANC Youth League. Mpeki's ANC Youth League. A man who defied the rules and failed to observe protocol. I think that is one of the main reasons that I took interest in him, as he was an individual who dared to challenge somewhat non-progressive norms of an organization. I accepted the invitation, and an hour or so later, as the dust settled in, the words that ran across my mind were, what have I gotten myself into? I thought about calling him back to council. However, I thought that this was an opportunity to have an open dialogue we so desperately need as a nation about a cancer that is slowly but surely eroding our society, racism. I was born in Johannesburg in 1983 during the apartheid days. I don't really remember much of my early years. However, I do remember certain important events, such as Kotesa 1 and Kotesa 2, which I thought were dances. The release of the greatest man to have walked this earth in my lifetime, Tatu Talipunga, Rolihlahla Yem Yem Madiba Nelson Mandela. The assassination of Chris Hani, the mass IFP massacres of innocent people in Thokoza Khumalo Street and Buipatong, and of course the historical event that I will never forget in my life, the 1994 democratic election. An event, as I was told by my grandfather, which meant a fresh beginning for our people. I never really understood the concept of our people at that stage of my life. I moved from a township school to a prestigious multiracial school when I was in standard 2, what is now by norm referred to as grade 4, having been taken a class back due to my poor grasp of English. There were very peculiar features about the school which were foreign to me as the following. The school had a security access point system, a factor which caused my father to remember the following words that I will never forget. At least here, my child will be safe from all the township madness. The school had white people who I'd only seen on TV. I had never seen so many white people in my life. It had a swimming pool, which I'd also never seen in my life. There were sports grounds with grass turf on them, which was quite bizarre to me, as our school grounds were on the desert side of things. They made these new school grounds seem like an oasis. The school had a library with lots and lots of books, a music facility with musical instruments, an indoor assembly hall, computers, and so forth. But most important of all, the school had a functional system characterized by a present and active principal, teachers that could patiently teach without frustratingly beating up a child, teachers who could speak proper and fluent English and Afrikaans, and parents who were actively involved in their children's education. It was at this point in time I noticed a stark contrast between township poverty and suburban privilege. The moment I set foot on my new school, I knew I was entering a world of privilege. The Oxford Dictionary defines privilege as a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group. As young as I was, as a young man, I was harshly awakened to the reality that privilege was racial in nature in South Africa. White people, as it were privileged by nature, and black people were poor by nature. My definition, of course, of privilege evolved through the years. I will shy away from the sensitive topic of privilege, as it is a discussion for another day. At this point in my life, I was a happy child. My hard-working parents were progressing in their respective careers. My dad as a salesman and my mom as a nurse. To me, everyone on earth was a unique individual. I did not see the world through black and white lenses. I was taught by my teachers that we belong to one race, the human race. The first time I was exposed to racism was when I moved from JP High School for boys to Alberton High School. It was at this juncture that I was made aware of the fact that I was black and white people were white by a very racist principal who did a brilliant job in sowing divisions among school children based on racial grounds. Unfortunately, the teachers were no different from their headmaster. It was in matric that we as the matriculants changed the norm. We collectively challenged the structural racism that existed in the school and ended up being the most defiant and racially unified matric group in the school's history. When I moved to Cape Town to pursue my university degree at UCT, I didn't see many surprises as I had already been exposed to racism or to the racist realm of South Africa. I won't dwell much on my university due to time, but it was in Cape Town that I was schooled that there is a difference between a colored person and a black person. I mean, for the greater part of my high school years, most of my friends were colored. Cape Town brought a new twist to the term colored. However, the freedom of thinking, self-interrogation, exposure to local and international people and cultures in a university context helped me understand that not all people are racist and not all societies are racist. I started my working career for an international explosives manufacturing company, which was a deja vu moment for me due to the fact that the company boss mimicked the very good old Alberton High School principal. Though he was nice in appearance, his actions were contrary. It was obvious to me to see the advantages that white people had in the company over their black counterparts. It was ridiculous. The white guys progressed quicker career-wise in the organization compared to their black counterparts. The white guys were given better and more significant projects compared to their black peers. It was a norm to hold meetings in Afrikaans with little to no regard for non-Afrikaans speaking employees who were predominantly black. The list goes on and on. I will just cut through all the fluff. I'll get to the conclusion since I'm running out of time. With all that I've experienced in my life, I can make the deduction that our country is currently sick. It is plagued with racism, a cancer that South Africa cannot afford to harbor anymore. A cancer that has torn this country apart and has turned its children into vessels of hatred. But fortunately for us, there is a cure for this type of cancer. A unified us is the cure to the sickness. Each and every one of us has a capacity to influence change for the better. It begins with changing ourselves, the way we choose to look at each other, the way we choose to treat each other, the way we choose to stand up against what is wrong in our most private and hidden comfort zones. I'm almost done. It is up to us to challenge the stereotypes which are both dangerous and non-progressive. Like Tulani, it's up to us to not observe toxic protocol. A great man in the self of Nelson Mandela once put it swiftly: no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or background, or religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite, hate. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. The Dilalema is quoted as saying, the planet does not need more successful people. The planet desperately needs more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of all kind. He goes on to say, love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without humanity, or without them, humanity cannot survive. I will end off with a famous Stephen Bantu Biko quote, which reads as follows. In time, we shall be in a position to bestow on South Africa the greatest possible gift, a more human face. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lukanyo. My surname is Nyer. I'm going to say a number of hard things today. I'm going to charge you to listen through and let me get towards the end. I am building a particular argument, and I would appreciate it if you were to listen through what I know are hard things. I'm also going to speak in generalizations. I'm going to say white people. I want to say all white people. I want to say all black people. I have no doubt that there are in this room, because you're all here interested in this conversation, that there are many good white people. The problem is not that they're good white people. The problem is that there's a structure that good white people live in, and the structure is anti-black people. This is why I'm going to speak in generalizations. I'm not going to say some white people, some black people. I'd initially said no to this, to speaking today. The reason I had said no, and even though I'm fully aware it's a group of Christians, even I'm fully aware that today's talk is in a church, I couldn't help but remember the incident of Charleston in the United States, where even a church is not a safe environment. I did eventually agree. You can ask me later on why I did agree. But I did agree. You can start at 10 minutes now. So at the famous Riverside Church in New York City, Dr. Alan Bussack, looking at the death of Abraham in Genesis 25, articulates a model for radical reconciliation. Bussack argues that in order for Ishmael to have been present at the funeral, Isaac would have needed to find and reconcile with him. He argues that Isaac must have recognized the mistakes made by his father Abraham and sought to make them right. Bussack tells us that Isaac must have recognized that it was not enough for him to simply have land and wealth when he was not reconciled to his brother. Using this, Dr. Bussack concludes the sermon by saying, young white people cannot use the excuse of saying they did not cause the mess while they continue to benefit from it. He argues that it is on them to go out and find their brother, black people, and reconcile with them, so that they can be blessed, as you see in Genesis 25, verse 11, after. Yeah, you can read that for yourself. So off the back of the story, over the next 10 minutes, I will argue that reconciliation is not possible without relationship, and that relationship only comes from recognizing the humanity of the black other. First, I will describe that black people are people stripped of their humanity. Second, I will look at why black people telling their stories and experiences is not enough if their humanity is not recognized. Third, I will discuss the importance of black people being each other's mirrors and the need for them to hold each other accountable. Fourth, I will examine what it means to form a real, effective, and authentic relationship with a black person. And finally, I'll reimagine the reconciliation project as we know it. You'll note I only have 10 minutes, it's possibly 8 now. That's why I'm reading this quickly. Firstly, black people are people stripped of their humanity. I believe anti-black racism stems out of the refusal to perceive black people as fully human, created in the image of God. It is not by chance that South Africa finds itself as a country of wailing mothers, angry youth, terrorized fathers, exploited women, marginalized families, and vulnerable communities. It is my view that the hate in South Africa is in fact a part of a continuum of structural exclusion and othering that has existed in Africa for centuries, and that it has simply continued linearly into post-colonial and post-apartheid South Africa. That hate has become endemic in South Africa has created the perfect environment for racism and its ugly sibling, xenophobia, to thrive in our society, often violently, and we have taken the abnormal, sadly, for the normal. As black people, and yes, I will speak on behalf of black people today, as black people, ours is a fight to be human in the face of a structure that denies our humanity. Anti-black racism presents whiteness as a normal mode of humanity, which leads to the demotion of the other, the black other, to subhuman and non-human levels. Blacks, fronts for none suggests, are not structurally regarded as human beings. He suggests they are treated as an object among other objects, stripped bare of any essential, to the point of inhabiting a zone of non-being. The zone of non-being strips black people of their humanity. The resistance to seeing and treating black people as fully human has resulted, Cornell West tells us, in a nation of people who are degraded and oppressed and hungry for identity, meaning, and self-worth. Black people are effectively deficient of God-given identity and robbed of all inalienable rights to be. Black people are effectively deficient. I've just read that, didn't I? We find that whiteness dictates the classification of blackness itself and the tolerance levels of its various expressions. Some accepted per convenience, others outlawed. Whiteness assumes the role of benefactor of God-given rights then, and blackness is at her mercy. Secondly, the telling of our stories and experiences is insufficient if we are not seen and treated as human beings. It's not by chance that my bio was deliberately thin. This particular section will speak to that. We should not have to earn our humanity. At the core of my argument lies the suggestion that anti-black racism continues not because of a lack of understanding or knowing of the stories of black people, but rather a refusal to see and treat black people as humans. And so, I should be treated better simply because I am human and not because you know my story and experiences. And then out of charity, you bestow upon me a measure meriting your association and even better, your fellowship. No amount of storytelling will stop racism if our humanity is not recognized. It is important to note then that we are not just interesting biographies and stories. Because what happens when you don't find my story compelling? Do you then refuse to see my humanity? Thirdly, you need to be each other's mirrors. We need a collective resistance against racial injustice. If it was whispered over dinner tables, was affirmed in men's clubs, articulated in university lecture halls, and codified as policy in government, in committee rooms of government, or platforms of whiteness, might I add, it need be there that it must be re-examined and challenged. I feel it important to stress that racist cultures and attitudes are sustained by entire social contexts. Lwandile Figeni writes, white culture in South Africa is defined and sustained by racism. Spatial racism, cultural racism, linguistic racism, economic racism, and every other form of racism imaginable. I believe white people are more likely to change if there is positive peer pressure at play because they want approval of other white people, their friends and family. White people need to create a culture that holds white people accountable and that challenges and stops others from being racist in their name, your name. When you say nothing, you are being complicit. Fourthly, so what does it mean to form a real, effective, and authentic relationship with a black person? The foundation should never be that the person is black and that God told you to. Rather, this should be from the standpoint that they are human, just like you. Maybe I should say that it's good to listen to God. If God is saying be friends with a black person, do it, right? Humanity for the black community is not a scarce resource. Everyone not only demands humanity, but also deserves it. Relationship with black people does not only count with your inner circle, but seeing black people as humans goes even for the black people you consider purely functional, a tool and means to an end, and even those most detestable and repugnant in their ways. Not say that. Maybe I should. So I don't expect relationship today simply because you've heard me speaking today, right? And I think it's important that you don't only afford relationship to me because you've heard me tell you this, but you are willing to afford relationship to all black people because we all deserve relationship. Relationship and fellowship must be from a position of two standing equals submitting to one another without fear or favor, to share a meal and commune, no one usurping or abdicating any levers. Umtu abone omnye umtu qha. I'm not going to interpret that. Finally, there is a need to reimagine the reconciliation project as we know it. Because reconciliation is the foundation for a united South Africa, not the destination. We have used a fundamentally biblical concept to further benefit the privileged and further marginalize the already marginalized. Reconciliation, as seen in Luke 19 through Zacchaeus, is not possible without self-introspection and review, owning up and recompense. Throughout the Bible, God deals in both reconciliation and justice at play together. The best example of reconciliation and justice at play, for me, is seen on the cross. In order for us to be reconciled with God, Jesus had to pay the cost of our sin. In other words, justice. The act of the cross was not reconciliation in lieu of justice, but rather justice in order to be reconciled. We would not have been reconciled without the act of justice. So then when we speak about the need to reconcile as a people, then we need to speak about the need for justice. Is a reconciled South Africa a future reality to be hoped for, or a present reality to experience now? The small gains made since 1994 should be acknowledged. However, we should not mistake them for thinking we have solved our deeply entrenched race problems. So I'm a massive Game of Thrones fan, so I couldn't help but quote Tyrion. So in the last season, I think it's episode 8, where Tyrion says, "It's easy to confuse what is with what ought to be, especially when what is has worked out in your favor." Reconciliation in South Africa is both here and not yet. And if that sounds familiar, Paul speaks about kingdom being here and not yet. And I think that's the kind of approach we should take to reconciliation, and that we shouldn't take it as if it's an end, but rather the process of reconciliation is a process. We need to live as if we are fully reconciled, but also put in the work to make sure we are truly reconciled. As I pointed out over the last few minutes, the central issue when it comes to anti-black racism is a refusal to see and treat black people as human beings. Unless you begin to see all black people as human beings and build authentic relationships with them, you are not going to have the desired impact from these conversations, though they may be well-meaning. And that's why I didn't want to speak today, because I'm tired of having this conversation. I have this conversation at least twice a week. I have it at least twice a week, and the moment I walk away from the coffee shop we're at, from the dinner table we're at, I experience an act of racism. The last 2 paragraphs. 3. As the church, we have it in our power to change society. In fact, we are duty-bound to do so. The church must show Jesus in this painful and raw subject. I believe changing one element of the system, the church in this instance, will result in a change in all the other elements as well. If Christians do not model certain values and principles, they will not meaningfully persuade society. We will instead be disqualified and discredited with all the scorn we deserved by society. For we will be without the moral ground to speak with any moral authority. An ineffective church will not stop God from doing what needs to be done to ensure His kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven. God will not wait for us to get it together. God will continue to move with or without us. let's make sure it's with us. In closing, to borrow from one of my favorite authors, James Baldwin, it is up to us to end this racial nightmare and achieve our country and change the history of the world. Ngos.
How are you guys feeling? The reason I've put that date up there, 7th October 2015, that was last week, Wednesday, so 6 days ago. That's the most recent day on which my computer is just frozen up. That's the most recent day on which I was called a kafir, 6 days ago. I'm not making it up, I'm not kidding, that's the truth. A gay, middle-aged, English-speaking man driving a white Mercedes-Benz, a C350, I like Mercedes-Benz, called me a dumb kafir. That's only a portion of a version of the story. The rest of it is as follows. I was driving behind this guy. He was driving like 30 to 40 k's an hour. I was in a bit of a rush. I tried to overtake him. He sped up. So I tucked back in behind him. He slowed down again. And I tried to overtake him again, and he sped up again. Luckily this time I managed to overtake him, except there was a car coming on the other side. And so I might have been dumb. I might have been a bit of an idiot. But I don't know what made me a kafir in that situation. But that's the South Africa that we're living in every day. This is my current favorite quote. It's gonna come up, I believe.
There's two kinds of people in this world when you boil it all down. You got your talkers and you got your doers. Most people are just talkers. All they got is talk. But when all is said and done, it's the doers who change this world. And when they do that, they change us. And that's why we never forget them. So which one are you? Do you just talk about it? Or do you stand up and do something about it? Because believe you me, all the rest of it is just coffee house bullshit.
There's nothing like the mafia to give you a good quote to start off an evening in a Christian church. The reason that's a favorite quote of mine is because I can talk about the incident of being called a kafir, or I can go and do something about it. A big part of what real talk is about for me is about doing something about the racism in the country and trying to change that kind of thing. Let me take it a bit light before I go heavy again. So who am I? I'm a 30-year-old black South African, male, of Venda, Pumbi, Tsonga, and Xhosa descent, all at the same time. I am married with no kids. I was born and raised in Mansfield, Musina Mansfield, in the Limpopo province, a township which is 12 kilometers from Bay Bridge border to Zimbabwe. And my wife thinks it's because I'm Zimbabwean that I married her being a Zimbabwean. But I'm not. I speak 10 of the 11 official languages well enough to be able to live in any part of South Africa. I don't know why. I think I just watched too much TV as a child. And for 9 of my first 18 years on this earth, I spent at least 6 hours of each day with white South Africans, mainly Afrikaans. And with all that said, at best, I have racial prejudices, but probably I'm just racist. The House of Dings, that's what I call my household. The Western culture tells me that that's the House of Dings. Yeah, I know I'm ugly of the two people up there, but it's okay. That's my wife and I. The real House of Dings, on the other hand, given where I've grown up, looks more like that. And that's just one half of the House of Dings, and that's my mom's side. It's my grandmother and her 5 children, whom I have direct responsibility for, along with her 10 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. And it's not something I can run away from. That's my family. Me in a nutshell, I went to school in Laerskool Messina and Hoërskool Eriklo, so my Afrikaans is alright. I studied in the University of Cape Town, not Stellenbosch. That's in bold and red. I have a Bachelor of Business Science and Economics. I have a Master of Commerce in Development Economics. I lived in the capital city of the Republic of the Western Cape for 8 years. What a beautiful racist city. And I generally qualify as what people commonly call a coconut. I won't delve into that, but that's the truth about my existence apparently. I'm building what will one day become the most valuable and most profitable investment firm, and I say that because that's going to be the truth. Some open secrets about me, and these are the things that I try not to tell my black friends. I'm a Blue Bulls and Springbok supporter. I love the English language. I think it's beautiful and just makes sense. And there's no other country that I'd rather live in except South Africa. I'm a capitalist with a social conscience. Things to know about me. Being articulate doesn't mean I'll agree with you. Telling me I speak good English is not a compliment. I'm almost never trying to impress you, so don't think I am. I'm not interested in confirming your prejudices. I do not speak for all black people, unlike Lucanio. And I like finding solutions to big challenges. That's the thing that drives me. So my current big challenge, how can we best ensure that all South Africans live prosperous, healthy, physical, mental and spiritually healthy, and secure lives? Or as the ANC says it, how can we create a better life for all? Amanda, nothing? No. Okay. There are two things that I've failed to understand in my adult life. The two mysteries, I call them. The one mystery is understanding women, and the second mystery is understanding white people. I love my wife, I love my mother, I love my mothers, apologies, I love my sisters, but I often just don't understand them. Some of my very good friends are white. Have you heard that before? No? But I often just don't understand them, with one or two exceptions, or some of them are in this room. As a result, my adult life is partially dedicated to the pursuit of solving those two mysteries. Understanding women and understanding white people. I'm going to get a hiding tonight from my wife. What I've learned so far in the time that I've had here, English and Afrikaans, South Africans are different. Who knew? And in all that said, if I had to choose one of those groups on the matter of fighting for South Africa, I would go with the Afrikaans people. Why? Like black people say Africa is now their only home. You don't have a choice. Basically, we're stuck together. Okay. White people are very insular. Again, broad generalizations. Very insular and only see what they want to see. White people have a huge sense of entitlement. I've only heard this ever said about black people. But the more I get to know people, the more I see them to have a sense of entitlement. White people are worried that they will always be asked to give up more and more. And I think that's a legitimate concern. And it's something that I've recently learned. And it's something that I need to think about more and what that looks like. Let me talk you through some white excellence, or the things that I do admire about white people in South Africa. Sanlam, Sasol, Old Mutual, Denel, ISCO, ABSA. What phenomenal things. I think they were built in a short space of time and they were built well. The Blue Bulls again, the Springboks and the Proteas and SAB. That's just some examples. Yanni Mouton and Brian Joffe, I think, are some of the best capital allocators the world has seen. Christoph Wiese and Koos Becker have built some ginormous entities that continue to do great things. UCT, of course, is an amazing university. Matis, Takis, Rao, Kofsis, Paka, built in a short space of time specifically to propagate education in Afrikaans. I think that's remarkable. It's not something I think is cool, but I think it's remarkable. The JSE, the 4 banks, the CSA qualification, I think those are things that were built. And phenomenally Afrikaans, given that it was a kitchen language for slaves back in the day and has become what it is today, building it to what it has been is a phenomenal achievement. Those are the things that I do think are amazing about white people. Now for the harsh stuff. What do I not like about white people? I think the majority, nearly all, white South Africans are deeply racist. I think white South Africans are deeply selfish. I think white South Africans have done little to nothing to help the cause of reconciliation. I hate that I have to adjust myself to fit into a dominant culture of a minority group in my country. I want Zulu to be the language of business. I'm not even Zulu. But that's because the majority of the country speaks that language. More harsh people. Government, which has done a lot of things right, is failing black people, big time. Black people ought to do more to build economic muscle. White people ought to give more support to black pursuit of economic freedom. White people have hitherto been too comfortable with their privilege and the idea that it is earned and deserved. There are many angry black people in the country. Still harsh. I'm going to stop soon, I promise. The SA middle class is too comfortable with the level of poverty and inequality in the country. There is too much distrust between groups, black, white, labor management, government, business, rich, poor. Notice that the division is almost always along racial lines, unfortunately. Black South Africa is of the view that white South Africa has contributed nothing to reconciliation. And I say that again because it is so pervasive across Black South Africa. White South Africa thinks Black South Africa is lazy, from what I've heard across the time. And that's something that we do need to discuss as well. We simply don't know or understand each other. And that for me is the important bit and why this conversation is happening. We need to get to know and understand each other. Some good news. Rwanda in 94 saw the slaughter of almost 1 million people in a space of 100 days. We still haven't gotten there yet. Okay? The Nazis, 6 million people killed. We haven't done that. That's something good about South Africa. Some good news. 1994, we managed to have what was effectively a miracle election without any bloodshed. I think that's remarkable. The government of national unity. We saw black and white work together to build what they believed to be a country that they wanted to have their future in. Again, I think that's remarkable. Some good news. I know Johan Erasmus is not just white Afrikaner. He's God's creation before anything else. I want Johan to see me in the same way. I know that being black doesn't automatically mean that you're a good person or being white that you're evil. Black and white South Africans share a common hope to bequeath a prospering country to their offspring. Genuinely what I want. People can and should be the difference. And most importantly, God remains the hope for us all. Resolving my big challenges. I think it starts with understanding. I think that's why these conversations are happening. You can't solve a problem that you don't even understand. It involves relationship. It's difficult to watch someone you love suffer. You only get to love someone by having a relationship with that person. It must involve doing something. Talking is very easy. Doing something is what makes the difference. And we need to do something. And I'll just get back to my quote again. All the rest of it is just coffee house bullshit. Thank you.
Most of you have not left the building, so congratulations for sticking it out. And what's going to happen now is we're going to have 50 minutes where Itai is going to facilitate a conversation between the three of them, because you might have noticed there are some differences between the three of them. So they're going to have a conversation between each other, and after that, we're going to allow you guys to ask questions.
So let's maybe. Some of the questions I'm going to ask might be simple questions or kind of easy questions because we're trying to work into this. And there's some issues that I think you guys, I have thought about, spent a lot of time thinking about that perhaps not everyone has spent a lot of time thinking about. So some questions might be simple in that sense, but remember it's a discussion that we want to expose to people who are perhaps new to this. Just tell me about the experience of being a coconut and what that means, Tulani.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the core of it is that you exist in at least two worlds, probably three. So you exist in one world where the white people exist, you exist in one world where the black people exist, and the third world where you actually exist. And that's you and your fellow coconuts, I suppose. And you get to vent about both the black and the white people because you don't understand either side. I think what it does is also at times make you feel lost. I think just not belonging. So it adds another layer to identity, which does not necessarily help. I think the worst thing about it though is that you discover that quite late in your life. So I think Lindy's kind of pointed to it somewhat. For the longest time, well, for me, it would have been similar. I went to a black school for the first 5 years of my life, and I was comfortably black and good there. Then I went into a white school for a while. It took me a year or two, but eventually I thought I was comfortably white and comfortable. And then one day someone was like, no, you're not white, and someone was like, no, you're not black, and then suddenly I had to discover what I am. And I became a coconut somehow. Unfortunately, I don't think it actually captures the truth of what it is to be a coconut. I'm not black on the outside and white on the inside. I'm just different from both groups.
Thanks. If you have anything to add to that, jump in. Lindiswe, you hinted at, I think, the importance of education and exposure. What did the exposure you had, what what did that do for you in a way which it might not have done for perhaps a cousin or your folks, in how you came to a view about what this country is all about? Just talk about exposure and maybe give us one or two stories inside that.
First of all, education is, I think, the most important tool that each and every human being can have, because it broadens your perspective of things. It makes you understand the big picture. And I think that's what's missing when you look at unprivileged people who are predominantly black in South Africa. They don't have that tool to help them see the big picture. I'll give you a classic example. I'm wholly frustrated by the fact that mine workers don't understand that unions don't work. I think we all in this auditorium share that emotion, but unfortunately the masses don't see it that way. Why? It's because of the lack of understanding the simple fundamentals. So they'll take whatever it is that someone else would say, and without having any form of resource of researching what they say and so forth. So I think in order for us to move forward as a country, we need to sharpen education.
But doesn't that also work the other way around? You've talked about how black people don't have exposure, but I would imagine that a lot of white people don't have exposure as well. So, for example, back to the mines, I'll put my hand up. I've never been to a mine in any useful way in South Africa. I've never been exposed to what it means to spend 10 hours working underground in 40-degree temperatures. I don't know what a mining hostel looks like or what it's like to live there, but I'm sure it sucks. So there's also non-exposure on the white side, isn't there?
It's true, but it depends on the levels of education. So, for instance, if we take around about 8% of the South African population doesn't have a standard 5, which is a grade 7, and you take, this is a black population, and obviously the picture looks very different on the white side of things. So that simple primary, but I'm looking for the word basic education that white people would have, puts them in a much more better advantage than the black counterparts. So yes, there are uneducated white people, but compared to the masses, which is the black people, the picture is different.
Let me push on that. Johnny, do you want to add to that?
Yeah,
I want to push on that, and I want to ask both of you. I was actually going to come directly to Lukhanyo.
I know for a fact that Lukhanyo has a very different view to Lindy on that, and I can't wait to hear what he's going to say now. I think the key thing for me is that when you have essentially the economic tools, and by that I genuinely mean money and ability to get access to things that are the exposure or lack of exposure is by choice. So people don't go to townships because they choose not to go to townships. But the kind of exposure, the kind of lack of resource that a mine worker would have in terms of being able to research what is actually feasible and viable in terms of an increase for a mine is not by choice. It's just something that they're just not able to do. And for me, it's worse to not choose to go and see what the rest of the country looks like and see how you can contribute to making a difference, as opposed to someone who is almost not exposed out of genuine ignorance.
Okay. Yes. Same. If you want to make any point about that.
Maybe I'll start with telegraphically. Can I say, one, I'm not a coconut. And I am 5 years younger than Tulani. From crash, I've only been around white people. And I don't prescribe to the coconut. I think it's a particularly problematic term. We can have a conversation about that another day. But I don't call myself a coconut. And I also disagree vehemently that unions don't work, right? and today, and that's not the point of today. So I'm not going to answer in depth. I'm simply going to say I disagree. Without the unions, black workers would continue to be exploited, even more so than they've already been exploited by white corporate say. No, your question.
Okay, so let me ask something about what you said. You said that something about whiteness being the normal mode of humanity. Just expand on that a little bit.
Sure. That this entire discussion is having to happen in English. That when I walked in at the door, I had to leave my blackness at the door. That the things I would do when I'm around black people, the way I'd respond to situations, the way I'd speak, the way I'd act, the way I'd respond, I had to leave all those at the door. The sad reality of our society is that whiteness is good, blackness is black. It is bad. And we are taught, and in the education thing, the issue is not, so what bishops taught me, the private school that my parents were able to send me to, what it taught me was not mathematics. It didn't teach me science, no. It taught me how to act in white spaces. How to act and be accepted in white spaces. All what I learned at bishops was how to make sure that you see me and treat me well. That's what it taught me. So every day I remind myself, oh, I'm around this group of people now. And in order for them to recognize who I am, I need to act this way. And in a long-winded way, that's what I mean by whiteness is the norm. And I quoted Fanon earlier on. Fanon says that black people aren't even othered. It's nice being othered. Being the other is nice. Being a non-being is completely different. And I say this because of, and I didn't want to go this route, but I'll say it because of the lived reality of every day when I walk into the places I work and the coffee shops I work at, I constantly feel that there's a shift where when I walk into the room, there's a shift because no one can see that I went to bishops. No one can tell that the state of my bank account. No one can tell my accent. No one can see any of it. All they see is this black object. And that's what I mean by whiteness is the norm. And that whiteness doesn't have to jump through the hurdle of having to earn humanity at every step.
So this is the structural racism thing that you were talking about, I think, right?
Yes.
That there is you bring your black face into the white space. That black face in the white space means certain things automatically. And then you have to work to demonstrate or disprove all of the tags that are coming along with that. Is that what you're talking about? That part of what you're...
Yeah, it's part of what I'm talking about. I suppose I also don't want to be overly reductionist and simply limited to the economics of it. And the only reason I don't want to, there's a prevailing narrative at the moment that says all that we need to fix at the moment is economic freedom. It's not going to help us.
Let me take this deep and push, and I'm maybe still talking to you, but listen in. It sounds to me that there's a sense in which you guys, the ones I'm listening to now, are also having to deal with something that affects you and has hurt you and has wounded you yourself in your time and in your lifetime. And how are you working through that? So, when I think about the recognitions of my own life, that my own language is something that I've not seen as worthwhile or valuable. I'm now recognizing that, this is a part of the structure that I live in. that has never given me a sense of valuing this. And I'm having to recover, in some ways repent, and try and move in that direction. What are the kinds of things where you're seeing the hurt, and maybe I think the hurt is the right word, in your own lives? And
I actually have an awesome physical example of blackness being tested. So when I've told you this before, but when I went to Messina, our last school Messina, as I'm sure Mr. James would want me to call it, for the first time, it was 95. So it's 1994, just had a democratic dispensation, and in the new year of 95, I go into a white school, and there are 4 black boys and there are 6 black girls in a school of about 750 kids. Okay, we also happen to be concentrated in one class for whatever reason. Most of us, for reasons I can't remember, whatever chance, whatever it was. But at that time, we were literally tested physically by studying literally from the youngest up till, I think from January up to September that year. The 4 black boys were involved in at least one fight a day until September, where one of us finally kicked the stunned fighter's backside. Where you literally, everyone just wants to see, are you strong enough to beat me up? Are you this, are you that? Luckily, between the 4 of us, one of us was academically dominant and dominated the entire class. One of us was athletically dominant, dominated almost the whole school. One was socially phenomenal, and so on. So as a combination, we made one phenomenal person. And that's probably by the grace of God, but we almost had to prove ourselves as not being viewed as good enough, and it completely had to do with the fact that we were not white at the time. But I think it's pervasive to the point where even in corporate South Africa today, to get a shot at being big, you need to show that you can handle the space in a manner that's not offensive to the white guys who are in charge. And that usually means being a bishop's kid or speaking English and took it away or whatever it is. And sometimes speaking Afrikaans, because in Old Mutual is beter om Afrikaans te praat.
Lindis. You still black. Coconut. Anyway, I'll explain that one. I think I go through a hurt every day. More so now since I'm a parent of 2 young kids. And I take them to a white crash. So every time I drop them off in school, I almost break into tears because for them, their world is quite innocent, if I can put it that way. So a kid will never see race. It's only when you get out into the deep blue sea that you shade into a racist self. Basically, that's basically how it works in our society. So I'll look at what I thought would be thriving nations, such as the Scandinavian nations. They're very progressive. There's no racism there. But then when you hear people that have been to those countries, they will tell you the contrary. That racism exists everywhere. So I think that hurts me more than anything. That there's just no escape. Whether you go to a township, you see racism. Whether you go to a mall in Pretoria, which has got a lot of malls, you see racism. So it's really unfortunate that we bring up kids in such a society.
It's interesting because I was having this conversation the other day with a friend, and the reason I said no to speaking to them was because the very act of speaking here requires a certain level of vulnerability and opening myself up to psychological violence. And what I do now is I practice self-care. I avoid spaces where I feel I'm going to be violated psychologically. That's the one thing. The second thing for me that's becoming increasingly important, and Os Guinness in his book, A Free People Suicide, has a brilliant quotation. He says, I forget the quote now, but I'll tell you what, paraphrase. Paraphrase speaks of how the issue is not the wolf at the door, but rather the termite in the floor. The issue is not the wolf at the door, but rather the termites in the floor. And one of the ways I'm beginning to handle anti-black racism better, beyond just simply acknowledging my hurt. So the tone I delivered my talk in today, the way I wrote it was very deliberate. I did not want to hide the feelings and thoughts I have. That's one. The second thing about it is me also being less concerned with, and I'll put this bluntly, and please catch it correctly, being less concerned with white people. A lot of the time we spend as black people far too much time trying to, white people treat us better, white people treat us better, white people treat us better, and we forget the real wounds and issues created by anti-black racism over all the centuries. And I think what's becoming important for me, and for it could also simply be a reason.
So not anti-black racism as in from whites or from other white people?
Oh no, from white people.
Okay.
With another conversation, that will become racist. It's a different conversation. So what I'm beginning to spend a lot more time in now is healing, doing the work of healing. How do I spend more time amongst black people? Say, black people, there is serious levels of inferiority complexes that we've inherited that are forced on us to consider every single day. There's hurt that you experience every single day. How do you handle these termites? The wolf at the door, and when I say what will be Chinese mirrors, the wolf at the door must go back to its pack and handle itself. And so I'm beginning to shift my focus from handling the wolf. And this is probably the last time I'm going to speak where I have had a situation, an occasion like this, because I think it's not entirely helpful. When it causes more hurt. I'm going to walk away from this today. I'm going to even though I could take what is good, but there's hurt that comes along with having to speak about this for such a long period of time. And my role now is to focus on the role of healing, not just the individual, but the collective. Because and maybe I should say this in my final thing. The reason I do say I speak about black people is that unlike in Western societies, where society is over-individualized, in black society, we speak about and of the collective. That there's a collective experience and that we don't over-individualize things. And that's one of the reasons I refuse to speak of personal experience, because there's a collective experience, a collective hurt, there's a collective request for justice, there's a collective request for reconciliation that is necessary. And I think it's the over-individualization of our pain and hurt that's meant that we haven't created our issues. Because what we then do is that if I'm reconciled with one white person, I'm happy. The issue is not me being reconciled with one white person, but rather if we're able to deal with the collective, because that's where the problem is, not the individual. It's easy for me to accept it as an individual, but it's harder for all of us to accept it. And that's why, yeah.
So we're kind of getting short on time, so there's a couple of questions that I really think I need to get in there. I think it was you, Lucan, you talked about intentions, and I think you were hinting at intentions of white people don't really matter. And if I can take that a little bit further with my words, not yours, the intentions don't matter because the structure of the system determines the results, determines the way the intention is framed, determines what happens, determines who's got the power. Is that Is that correct? And just maybe say a bit about that and Tulani as well.
Quickly, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the intentions don't matter. No, in the sense that the structure does not maintain itself. So it's nice to say that all white people are good, and that is only the structure that's at play, but the structure does not sustain itself. It's perpetuated by people. So when I say yes and no, both of these things are at play, and because they're unbinding opposites.
So can you be a good person and a racist at the same time?
I think the nature of sin allows it to.
That's yes. Can you be a good person and a racist at the same time? Yeah, I think you're right about the nature of sin allows it. Yeah, you kind of sabotage my thinking. So I just give it the last bit again.
So I was saying that the intentions, do intentions matter in the context of a structure that actually kind of mediates and communicates the let me give you a quick example. White friends of ours, we heard them talking to us about this on Saturday, had an incident where at a garage someone cut in front of them and just did something that was just not cool and quite rude, because they cut in front of them and ended up getting served before them. They came out of the car and said, "Look, what are you doing?" Guy happened to be black, said, "You're not my boss." Their intention was to speak to a rude person who did ABC. It looks like there was a structural thing which happened, and that person's response was a response to a structure, not to that. So
sure. Yeah, look, and I think that to say that intentions don't matter is unfair. But I do think that intentions are not enough. I think that intentions must be cognizant of the structure there. I think that it is very, well, the responsible thing to do is to say, for example, if I come to you, so white person X comes to my house and brings me back because they think I'm hungry. And the intention is to give me back because they think I'm hungry. I can be like, what racist nonsense is this? You think all black people eat back, blah, 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 because of my own things. Now, the intentions can't be ignored because they were good. They were trying to feed me. But my reaction can be seen in the context of the structure where maybe the thing to do was to come and say, Tulani, are you hungry? And if you are hungry, what do you eat? So I relationship. Yeah, but again, and that's what I was driving at. All of that stuff requires the relationship to be able to know what the right things to do are, even in the space where there is a structure that's fighting against those things. Yeah.
I'm gonna squeeze one last question in before the white people's representative comes up to take over. Something that we must acknowledge, and we're doing this for the first time. There will be hopefully other opportunities to do this. There's a lot of testosterone up here, and we actually did have a female speaker who pulled out fairly late in the day. What has this walk as black men in this country, and your experience of black women, mothers, sisters, wives, etc. Just give me some reflections on your understanding of the black woman's struggle in South Africa, given this, because let's be frank, we only have half the battle. We're men, in a patriarchal society. It's doubly hard or triply hard for our mothers, wives, sisters.
I'll start with the mic.
And this is just a taste. They're not speaking for the room.
No, not speaking for the room, but my opinion of view. Look, I'm raised by a mother who's just flatly racist. She doesn't care for white people. She's not interested in white people. And as far as she's concerned, white people must go chill somewhere and preferably never come out. And I don't say that lightly. I say that because it speaks of very deep hurt in my mom. It's the hurt that she has experienced throughout her lifetime has made her to choose to not even see individuals within the white group because the pain has come through across that space. I think that, for example, I've always argued that I think Xhosa women are harsh, but they are harsh because their men were systematically pulled out of their communities and they had to play the role of men and be strong and be harsh and be all kinds of things that in an ideal world they wouldn't have had to play. So I think if there's any pain associated with being a black male, that pain is probably at least double in terms of being a black South African woman. Having to raise the children of another woman in another location while you have no idea what's happening to your own children being domestic. Having to sink to the level of carrying the leftovers from another woman's house to feed your own children because you just don't have enough to cover the children. The pain for women must be of proportions one can't possibly understand with black male, never mind the white person. And I think what's been missing the voice that's been very clearly missing from 94 has been that of the black woman. And I think Winnie Mandela gives us a clear picture of that. She's been played out to be the devil while her husband is played out to be the best gift to mankind. And all because she was doing what she needed to do to survive. Never mind actually thrive and be someone who lives up to 75. There's a voice that's missing, and I'm almost crying speaking about it, but there's something there. Yeah.
Very shocking and very long you've noted. I'm not going to speak on behalf of black women, I don't know, except to say that they live in a very patriarchal society where women act out levels of oppression against them. Where we exclude them daily in our practices. And I think I'm generous when I say 99.9% of spaces in society, in our society, are largely patriarchal and exclude women. When we then add that to the kind of racism we're speaking of, you complete that equation.
Sure. Tough one. I think both the speakers have captured my sentiment. They could not have said it better. I think in general it's quite tough to be in South Africa. As they've said that we're living in a highly patriarchal society. It's even much more tougher for black women, even nowadays. However, I think we need to look at the positives more than the negatives, where we come from in the society. Since 1994, I think in general we've made quite good strides. Women are recognized as people first, and black women are not recognized only as servants of black men, but they have a voice, which is quite important. I grew up, I'll share my life story. My father was quite a tribal man. He believed in the fixing up of women. And I actually lived to see that reality. And my mom was quite strong to actually deal with it. And also she was living two worlds. One is she was marginalized in the workplace, because she was a nurse. And then two, she was marginalized in a safe haven, which was home. So it was quite tough. So to have seen the change from that particular norm to what we have now is quite phenomenal. So I think even with the flow, being given an opportunity to ask questions, I think in our minds we should be thinking about providing solutions. We can talk until the cows come home about our experiences, how we're affected by racism and so forth and so forth, more and more. But then I think we're asking the wrong questions. The right question is, how do we fix it? It's broken, yes. We don't, oh, sorry, just to finish up. It's broken, and I'm an engineer, so I believe that there's always a solution.
Gentlemen, thank you. The last question, which I'm not going to put to you, but I think something you need to bear in mind, and perhaps as rounding off is, we're here, many of us are part of the Christian community. And to your point, Lindizo, about what do we do? What are the new, novel, perhaps imaginative, maybe they're old things that we just need to do, things that we need to start doing, or ways that we need to stop thinking in order that we can actually do things effectively. So just bear that in mind for, I think, this Q&A as well as for the end.
Thank you, Ty. Let's give Ty a round of applause, thanks. All right. As the four of them stay seated there, Ty, I think if there's questions directed to you, you must please be on stage. I would like to remind you guys that these are clarifying questions, so this is not your opportunity to tell them of your child playing Yanni who was not selected for the under-13s because of Tabu who got the job. This is an opportunity for you to ask clarifying questions for them. So with all due respect, we are not interested in your white story tonight. There might be another night for that, but it's not tonight. So ask clarifying questions. And usually a clarifying question ends with a question mark. Is that a hand? Yeah.
Very interesting. How do you reconcile hating white racism with being oppressive patriarchs?
To whom are you directing the question?
To the panel.
All right. I think with respect to time, you can choose who it goes to, Itai.
Okay. I think they're both ridiculous. And only my wife can answer this, but I think I try to run my home and interact with women in a manner that minimizes my patriarchal attitude, which are probably subconsciously embedded in me, I won't lie. And I say that even accepting the fact that I don't understand women more often than not. But I try to be an equalist. So I'm an equal opportunity offender as far as I'm concerned. So I think both equally bad. I don't know if that answers the question. No,
The work that I speak of when I say white people need to do the work of holding each other accountable both individually and the collective, that's how I reconcile it. I reconcile it by recognizing that I live in a patriarchal society and my actions, even when I'm not aware of them, are problematic. And the issue is for me to be cognizant at all times and not do exactly what white people do to me by placing women in the zone of non-being. What I'm constantly having to do every single day is dying to self, to my patriarchy. I die to it every single day. I'm fully aware that even when I speak to a woman and I interject, there are times when I can sense it that I'm using my male privilege at that moment. And I call myself back so that next time I don't do it again. So how do I reconcile it? By knowing it's there and doing the hard work of being less patriarchal. That's how I reconcile it.
Thank you. Please introduce yourselves. So that was Richard, just so that we know who you are, and we may come back to your question or something you said or asked. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Angela. I'm a Generation Y, so I've not really experienced racism as such. And I have read about it and watched all the movies and everything about apartheid and that. So I am aware, and I just want to commend you guys on the courage it takes to stand up and talk about these things. What I wanted to put to the floor is some potential solutions. And I'm very passionate about a family structure. And what frustrates me a lot, and that I'm seeing a lot, is that I feel like black men fail to commit to their women in marriage. And they have many children with many different women. And I think this places people at a disadvantage, because people are going through the world alone, and you can't go through the world alone. You need a family. And I just wanted to ask why that's the case, and if my perception is wrong. The next thing I wanted to find out is, why are townships unsafe? I'm catching taxis at the moment, and the first time I caught a taxi, my heart was racing. Why did I feel that way?
Let's have leaders that talk about townships and safety, and Tulani, you can talk about why do black men do Angela says black men do. Be happy and feel okay with being misunderstood.
Angela, that was a mouthful. Why are townships unsafe? Townships have never been safe. They're much safer now than they were. Growing up, I was exposed to extreme violence. I would see dead people driving to school. This was at a very young age. And now, what we see is there's more policing, visible policing within townships. In fact, to cut the fluff aside, townships are much safer now. And I'll give you a reason why. Back in the day during apartheid, from what I understand and what I saw, police resources were more concentrated within white spaces. So there were no proper police protocols in townships. And so, I'll speak for myself, I was living opposite people that I knew would do heists, would kill people, and would rob people. So I knew these guys, yet I would also know that police knew about them, but then there was just no proactive solution to dealing with it. So townships, or what we're seeing now, is an everyday reality. When you see or you hear about a robbery in Morningside or Fourways, it's an everyday reality in townships. But then in a general note, townships are much more safer than
Sorry, Ty, I'm going to touch a bit on that. Poverty is a bitch, so it's harsh. I mean, the first time I saw someone get killed, I was 9. The first time a friend of mine got killed with me there, I was 13. Townships are like 100 times better today. And I say this often, more often than I care to remember. The first thing I would have done if I was government, and I mean government with all the power to be government, is get rid of townships, because they're fundamentally wrong. They were designed to ruin people. Small windows, grey spaces, no trees. It's designed to kill people, and that's why they're the way they are. And if anything, we need to build better locations for people to live in. But there's nothing cool about a township, in my opinion. The issue around black men and not being with one woman, it's easy to look at it today and think it's the modus operandi of the black man. I think that ignores the systemic breakdown of the black family unit that happened for decades and decades in this country. Black men were shipped to single-sex hostels in faraway places to go to mines where their women were not allowed to come there. And so habits get developed over time and get entrenched, and they begin to be said to be a culture, because that's just what's been happening. When you are, and I love Fungai, but if I was to spend 10 of their 12 months away from Fungai, I'd probably find another woman to sleep with in that time. And I don't say that as a reflection on her, more as a reflection on me and my weaknesses as a person. And so we had decades of this very deliberate breaking down of the black family structure. And what we're seeing today is the result of that, unfortunately. And I don't know how you solve it yet. I'm working on it.
Thank you.
You spoke about your mom that it doesn't want to have anything to do with white people, understandably so. How does somebody, you can see me, 65 and so on and so forth, you can see where I've come from. How does somebody like me communicate and get through to her? Do I give up, turn, walk away? Is there a chance for me to communicate with her? How do I go about that?
What's your name?
You easy. We can chat till the wee hours in the morning.
Yeah.
How do I communicate with your mom?
Got it. What's your name?
Oh, sorry, I'm Jan Kleinsmith, so that explains everything.
Yanu?
All right. Thank you very much. I won't place any pressure on people I know on the stage. But my question is very simply, tonight I think that my name is Katleho. I think that a lot of people, or rather a lot of us tonight, will go back and find out, or rather view, perhaps if we have domestic workers, I speak as a white person, I suppose, if we have those or whatever, and we'll view the relationship perhaps differently. My question is, how do we remain authentic in seeking the relationship? Because it's very easy for us to be like, no, Lucanio made me think about this prejudice that I have. And I'm not actually wanting to deal with the prejudice and ask the worker, do I treat you like a subhuman being? I want to deal with my feeling good about this thing called Christ and Christianity. And so when he convicts me, I'm not dealing with the sin, I'm dealing with the symptom.
My name is Derek. I'm a lecturer at the University of Pretoria. I understand that, or from what I hear, is that there's a certain expectation from white people to reach out and build relationship. The question I have is, what advice would you give me to become part of government in a structure where I see that I'm also disappointed in a government that not only fails black people, but is failing a country as a whole? And how can I actively contribute to this country to make it a better place?
Let's take one more question.
Hi, my name is Pika and I'm a logistics analyst with Unitrans. My question is to Lucanio. Lucanio, what you said earlier about when you came in the door, you needed to leave your blackness outside. And in the fantastical, hypothetical situation where everyone in this room would agree to oblige and do whatever you would like us to change that, what would you tell us to do differently, as both as individuals and as a corporate body, to make you feel you retain your humanity when you enter our presence?
Yana, how do you talk to my mom? Let me try and answer your question in a roundabout way. I've spent a big chunk of my life in spaces where people have just hated me for being there. To be frank. And I said this, I started this with the 95 when I go into Lasco Messina. So disliked, even before I went to the school, that the headmaster didn't believe that I was intelligent enough to be in the grade that I should have been into at that point. He just couldn't believe that I would be able to handle it. For reasons I don't understand, and didn't want me to be in the school to that level. And that continued into the year in there, fighting with people all the time, and in high school. I mean, I opened with, most recent time I've been called a Kaffa was 6 days ago. That's amazing, to be honest. I've been called a Kaffa my whole life. It's just that simple. Now, however, I dealt with talking to people or reaching out to people that, for all intents and purposes, just hate me because they hate me. I'm just genuine. I'm honest about who I am, and my conversation with them is not necessarily about addressing their hatred for me. So a very cool thing, and it's lucky that I like rugby, but an easy way to break down someone who, and I mean a white, mostly Afrikaans guy who hates me, often for me is just because we can talk about rugby, because I happen to like rugby. And if they're in Pretoria, they probably support the Blue Bulls. It's easy. So from that point of view, from that point on. So for me, I think it's about getting to know the person, letting them get to know you, not to try to overly defend or overly, it's about relationship. And maybe know what they like. I don't even know how to talk to my mom, if I'm honest. But I think it's about just getting to know people and letting them know you. I don't think there's a silver bullet or anything of that sort, unfortunately.
The easiest, the number is, let me start and touch on the last thing if you don't mind. Townships were never built to be mankind. The entire purpose of townships was that they violent towards black people. But the entire purpose of townships was that black people are violent towards each other, and that they kill each other away from white spaces. When I spoke about spatial racism earlier on, this is the very thing I'm speaking about, that the spatial infrastructure of Ireland still continues. It's a pity that we haven't. It's also really practical to expect governments to get rid of townships, because though the role of townships were to destroy people, we also own them. Now, how do you take people away from themselves? There is the difficulty that at the same time we need to criticize the township setup, whilst also loving it, because that's where we grew up, whilst at the same time not over-romanticizing it. You spoke on that, so I wouldn't be able much to respond to this, and I will plead along. With regards to black men, the history of it is real. I mean, black men were the entire apartheid project who has to break us up. And it has, and I said it on, that we simply continue post-apartheid, post-colonial into today. And that if we want to make the work to fix this, it's going to continue until we start giving dignity back to black men, and we start giving dignity back to black women and treating them well. Then we start going to continue. It's not enough to move on. Interesting, I'm going to get this, sorry. If they give me an extra 2 minutes, I want to speak about the intersectionality of race and class. That race, and vice versa, race in South Africa is lived through class, class is lived through race. How do they ask their domestic worker? I cannot think of a simple way using patronizing and condescending. I can't. I really cannot give advice that would not suddenly come across as condescending and patronizing. The project I'm on, the two things I'm interested in my writing at the moment. One thing is what we are becoming as people. And Michael Ramsey, there's a talk where he speaks about how different religions are rooted in different things. That some religions are rooted existentially. Some religions are in thinking, in thought, some are rooted in feeling, some are rooted in doing. And he speaks how the difference in Christianity, that Christianity is rooted in being. And what I'm trying to get to here is that that's a simple approach we need to take in thinking of, and it's interesting I'm going to say this, but I'll correct it now. In thinking about what we are becoming, it's not enough for you to simply think better. about treating domestic better. It's not enough for you to simply think better about treating black people better. It's not enough to do better. It's not even enough to feel and say I feel better about black people. The bulk of it is simply being better. Just be better. And a lot of it has to do with us dealing with and living out what the Bible says. That when the Bible speaks about the name, it doesn't speak black people. It doesn't. To answer your question directly, what do you do? You treat things like the same way you treat yourself. Are you willing to have to... Let me change my tone. Change my tone. That's maybe directly to you. I'm not going to prescribe what you should do. Because I think you'll find that we aren't monolithic people. We aren't homogeneous. There are things that people will give the world appreciate, things I won't appreciate. What's important though is creating a culture and an environment that allows this expression to play out. And the sad fact is that a lot of our cultures and society and environments are suited to a particular kind of expression. So you find a lot of the time when I say that, last minute, I'm sorry. When I say that what white schools teach us, it teaches how to act in white spaces, they teach us how to have manners in a Western manner, in a white manner. That means looking you in the eye, that means speaking in a particular way. These manners amongst a lot of black cultures are bad manners. Looking at an old person in the eye is extremely rude. The battle I have being gone to white schools is moving into the eye because I'm taught one thing, but I don't know what it is backwards. So what we are taught is that I learned to act in your space and act in what we're going to call now a black space. Then what W.B. Du Bois calls double consciousness. Having a consciousness in both spaces. What people need to learn a trick word about human consciousness. Learn that there's a consciousness, a humanity beyond your own humanity. And that means creating space to allow my humanity, a full humanity, to be expressed differently to you. How that plays out, I don't know. I don't think about the things. I don't know. Can you catch your name? No. There we go.
You can maybe just go back a little, just quick. I think one thing that came together at townships was that the fathers of apartheid were not dumb. These guys were very smart. They knew what they were doing. And unfortunately, it's going to take smart people also to fix the system. And I think we need to smarter all of it if we are to fix the system. Then, if I want to know the question, probably is how do you or what can you as a white person contribute towards fixing Ghana? Contribute to Ghana. Oh, contribute to Ghana. Okay, contribute to okay. Well, I think I came to it in my speech that change starts with all of us. It's just one of the things that you do. That change. Change is quite contagious. So if you change yourself, your friends change, their friends change. The system in itself, the system works itself out. If one is committed to change. And remember, change is consistent. So I really don't have a solution to how you can contribute, but I think it starts with the small little things that you do. Also, I think the only way we can actually fix, because I think it's a collective effort, government or working towards fixing government or how government functions is if we stay united. I'll give you a classic example. We're horrified and angry about
e-tolls.
We're all angry. We couldn't understand where this concept comes from. And the COSATU organized a march, and just before the march, I remember my white peers also venting about e-tolls. But then when it came to marching, this guy didn't work. It didn't make sense. I mean, we complain about something, go out, do something, start with small things. So I understand that if you want a solution, you have to be part of the solution.
So Derek, I think there's an obsession with changing government in this country, and one of the things that get lost in that space is how much good government is doing. Don't get me wrong, they screw up every so often, but they do a lot of good. I don't think that we should all be trying to change government or whatever the story is. I think a big chunk of it is how do we just create a better South Africa, and he's right. It starts with, I mean, how do you live every day? Like, are you the kind of person that everyone can be comfortable around or not? It's some of those things. And you find, actually, for example, and I say this a lot to my white peers, if you can be comfortable to become part of the ANC as a white person, you are probably going to be very close to the president in a very short space of time and be able to influence it in a major way. But people can't even get themselves to be comfortable enough to be comfortable in that space as a starting point.
So I think the question is extremely problematic to all about government. Because what it says is that 62% of the electorate that voted in government is wrong.
And that's the lowest it's been.
And which is it. And I think it's problematic because it assumes that those who vote in government, the majority or majority black, don't know better. And that the reason these people, black people, I vote to the ANC, will continue to vote for the ANC, is because the ANC has repeatedly improved the livelihood of majority black people. And black people that are historically excluded from government and excluded from society. And the numbers of government continue to do that. And it was a great idea. The language of this conversation in that debate. Great idea. And last word is that when we critique government, the way we frame the questions, and I'm going to go back to the question in my own words. Even the question about the black men abandoning their families, the question about towns being unsafe are completely problematic. They're extremely problematic. They aren't historicized correctly, one. Two, they're extremely barbaric and uncivilized. And yeah, thanks.
Not now. And you are suffering because of what your brother has done, not because of what you've done. So, since I'm the man with the only mic that's live now, just one thing that's worth adding, and a way of thinking about this that's worth perhaps considering. South Africa is a country in which abuse, particularly the abuse of power, has been rife. Definitely since 1652, and probably since before then. Okay, and power abuse is something that's not distinctive or specific to a particular race or group of people or anything like that. It's what human beings are good at doing. We were given power at the beginning we thought that we were gods. And that's why we fell, and we've been abusing one another with our power since then. And in power abuse, one of the characteristics of it is that the abused ultimately gets used to being in a particular place, in a particular state, and in a particular way. The abuser, ditto. And we need to think hard about the ways in which the structure of society has placed us in various positions. Generally, white people, historically, in the position of the abuser, and starting to unthink and undo those ways. These guys have talked about the abused and what the abused experiences in terms of their feelings, in terms of what women have gone through in this country. And that's potentially a useful way of thinking about it, and I must credit my friend Zolile Mlisana on that. We do have a registration table outside with emails. This is something we want to do again in the future. So please, if you haven't put your email address down, please make sure you do that. And we want to carry on with this kind of conversation. I'm going to hand over to the white guy.
And I'm taking liberties because I've worked hard to almost do it. I've been challenging some of my white friends on this, and I think it's important to lead this year as well. And I think with an exception of Richard here, my experience with conversations with white people is that they are often without enough information about the real history of the country and the real stories behind stuff. And I don't agree with Richard's conclusions necessarily, but I know that it's informed having read things that are not necessarily the kind of thing that people read. So and Angela, sorry to pick on you, I like you, but to ask the question around why a black man not marry the wives and not have that understanding about the historic, I guess, the genesis and context of how that family structure has come to be the way it is, it makes the conversation difficult. So I don't know if you saw this, but when you asked the question, all of us almost automatically dropped our heads like, oh my God, I can't believe we have to answer this question. But again, it's because the type of things we're reading are different. And the challenge for me is let's try and find alternate stories, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm reading Richard's Masters just for that fact. Thank you.
In short, what Tulani is saying is, let's educate ourselves and join the conversations. My favorite song at this point for this kind of thing is Bob Marley's Redemption song. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. Thanks.
All right, thank you everyone. I just want to compliment you guys on your wonderful English. Where did you learn to speak English in such a... Sorry, I was called the white guy 5 times, so I had to get something in. Guys, I thank you for behaving yourself. Thank you for the fact that all 4 of them are still alive. And thank you for being vulnerable and listening to these things. And that's what's important. This is a humble attempt, but it is we're trying to educate ourselves. So I really thank you for not having a social life and coming here on a Tuesday night. And I want to thank Brooklyn NG Kerk for doing this, even if it means that Chris is going to lose his job. I really want to congratulate you guys and thank you guys for this. And on that note, they were kind enough to make us some coffee and cold drink on the other side. So if you guys are interested in keep going in continuing this conversation, then please go to the other side, which is the hall at the back of the church, and there'll be coffee, and hopefully these guys will be there to have some interaction.